Jenny Bell is a professional artist and passionate farmer who's found, as she says, unexpected parallels between the art of farming and how visual art reveals itself. And while she wrestled and rewrote this presentation today, I know she worked very hard on it, I think at its heart we will see a woman who's opened herself to the humility of seeking a much deeper understanding of her craft and her land. So please welcome Jenny Bell.
Thanks, Rebecca, and thank you to Jarl. Your generosity is an inspiration to us all. I was born into a farming family on the southern tablelands of New South Wales. My grandfather, father and uncle ran a fair bit of country between them, and growing up we were all involved, mustering cattle on horses, lamb marking, checking the paddocks, and listening to late night conversations haggling over the price of sheep. My father loved the land, or should I say the life that life on the land involved, and he instilled that love in all of us. But looking back, I do not actually recall anyone giving much attention to the foundation of all that activity and generation of wealth, the land itself. We did assess the grass, but only its quantity, to make sure the mob in the paddock had enough feed. We had a shed full of superphosphate in bags, the magic bullet of the day to boost growth in spring, and this seemed it was about all anyone needed to know about agronomy and grass. In the fashion of the era, Dad planted pine trees in single rows for shelter and freely admitted to hating gum trees. Microlina was not in our dictionary, and our definition of biodiversity would have been ryegrass, clover and phalaris. If it got dry, I recall bags of oats and hay, but not a destocking plan. Looking back, the country must have been tired, but we didn't have the eyes to see this. If I haven't mentioned my mother, she was so busy running a hectic domestic front inside the garden fence, she didn't get a look in outside of it. University educated, her presence soothed relationships, pacified agents and fed sometimes mobs of people at all hours of the day, with her garden as a haven of biodiversity, shade and ground cover. And as I recognise the stark demarcation between this and the surrounding paddocks, it occurs to me that if her insights had been more widely applied, we'd all have been better off. But it was the 70s, and even though I had a tremendous affinity with this life, there was no door open for me to be part of it as an adult either. I accepted this without regret, and after a year working on properties in Queensland, and then a TAFE course that opened a door to another world, I enrolled in 1980 at the age of 20 at the National Art School, where the rich but insular culture I had grown up with was challenged at every turn. The skills I acquired opened my eyes and my senses, and I assumed that the institutions, galleries and all the artists I knew were in cities. I'd be compelled to live an urban life. And so I did. It took me to the East End of London, where I supported myself with casual jobs and helping build banners for shop fronts. Until one day my father rang. I hung up and went straight to Heathrow with an overnight bag and was back in Breadalbyn in not much more than 24 hours. That was 33 years ago, and to my astonishment, I have now lived on the farm I share with my husband for over 30 years. Initially amidst family life, Rod ran the farm and I worked as an artist and part-time station hand, often taking my paints to the yards or wherever we were working. And of course, in sitting still and observing intensely as I had been trained to do, I saw the farm with ever more alert eyes. Questions slowly formed and were compounded when we helped form a local land care group and began setting aside country for trees and protecting remnant vegetation, slowly changing our relationship to the land. This happened at a greater pace for me than for Rod, as I had an outsider's perspective and an artist's eye. But slowly we both recognised we were not only running land as a unit of production, but as an ecological entity. And in the early 2000s, the dry showed us starkly we had to work out how to do it better. When Alan Savory's great insight that the behaviour of animals determines the health of the land hit our radar, it changed everything. And at about this time, the holistic educator, the late Bruce Ward, came to our farm. And I'd like here to acknowledge the debt we owe him for walking with us through the very difficult early stages of change. He was patient and determined, and his insights continue to influence the way we operate today. And this brings me to EarthCanvas. In 2019, Jill Sandbrook, whose vision and energy is quite something to behold, and her team invited 6 artists and 6 regenerative farmers to work together in the EarthCanvas project. It's rare that artists are asked to be active participants in practical matters, and as artists we were gratified that our insights and visual thinking were being put to work with people who had been through their own creative conversion. For the project, I was partnered with Anna and Michael Coghlan. And I'll admit to a degree of trepidation as I drove into Mount Narranarra for our first meeting. Artists are usually solitary in their working habits, and for good reason. Works take time to gestate and grow. Would these daring operators understand this and give me the space I needed? Would their expectations stifle my imagination? I need not have worried. At our first meeting, in defining our purpose, Anna and I found instant common ground in response to the sculptor Brancusi's great truism, simplicity is complexity resolved. And when Michael was asked about his expectations, he said in his deadpan way, he had none. But still, I had to search to find what it was about this farm I wanted to represent. I've always been interested in the structures and general paraphernalia on a farm, but the Coghlans have so streamlined their operation there was none. They instead use human ingenuity, their animals and a holistic plan to harness nature's forces. So how could I reflect this pared down, thoughtful boldness visually? I needed an angle to ignite a creative spark, so I did some research and discovered that the Catholic Church in the 1800s had owned and made enough money from the country in this rich valley to help build St Mary's Cathedral in Sydney. All that organic capital to build a sandstone cathedral hundreds of miles away. Could I find a way to contrast the dominion over all the earth mindset with the cooperative relationship evident on this farm? I couldn't. Perhaps a portrait of Anna and Michael as the powerful force between this innovative approach might work. It didn't. Could I focus on the cattle as agents of change? This seemed too literal, and I was wanting to go deeper. And then one day, I heard this. I used to teach people that to achieve, you must set goals and outline a step-by-step strategy. Now I encourage people to focus on what it is they want, fully commit, and trust that the universe will back them. It sounded like something an artist might say, but it was actually one of agriculture's great thinkers, Terry McCosker. So I relaxed. I took his advice. And sure enough, I found myself building this work without any fixed plan, and the mystery began to unfurl. I realised the secret lay in what you couldn't see. It was what nature was being allowed to do with their stewardship and the forces they were harnessing with their grazing animals. Lifeblood attempts to celebrate this, imagining a fragment of the life force beneath our feet, its microbes, its symbiotic relationships, and its interaction with the atmosphere, the interface on which all life on Earth depends. And amidst these living organisms, to my amazement, the last crucial link surfaced, the portrait of Anna and Michael I thought I had abandoned. I was trying to express a certain rhythm in the soil with the brightest orange I could find, and as I placed what I thought of as a black and white musical chord humming through the earth, I said to myself, good God, that's Anna. Not Anna in any realist way, but a sense of her edgy, energetic warmth. It did not occur to me to try and match her with Michael. It had seemed such an odd occurrence. But in the most casual of ways, a week or two later, there he was, a form that expressed this self-contained man with hidden reserves of cheekiness and strength formed in my hands. And lifeblood was complete, and I was as shocked by it as anyone. I see it as a symbol of hope, made at the front line of our building a renewed relationship with our ecosphere. How you see it is up to you. Thank you.